to kick you out of this chair, eh? I can't, you're so darn cute. Yes, I think that she's just gonna be the new host now. Are you ready for the responsibility? Yes. Another episode of Creation Over Destruction, where we talk all things upcycling and DIY projects. So this is part 2 for furniture, and on today's episode I'm going to show you how you can completely transform 2 pieces of very dated wood furniture with just one little jar of paint. Now, obviously that's not all you're going to need for this project. However, the list of materials and tools you're going to need for this one is pretty small, so you can definitely do it on a budget. The projects that I'm going to be tackling today are going to be a wooden stool that I'm going to turn into a plant stand, because I do have a lot of plants. And I'm going to take that very dated TV stand and I'm going to turn it into a little side table for my outside patio area. So enough chit chat, we're wasting the daylight. Gotta get to work. So yeah, come on, let's get started. So now let's get into the materials that you're gonna need for this project. So first up, like every other project, you're gonna need a good cleaner. And next up, if your stool or chair or whatever item that you're going to transform into a plant stand is made of wood, you are going to need little sanding blocks, or you can even use a sander as well if there's a heavy finish on it or you need to buff out any surface scratches. Next up, if you have any repairs to do, you are going to need a wood filler or wood putty or wood epoxy, depending on the severity of your repair. And then you'll also just need a putty knife as well. A tape measure is technically optional. If you're pretty good eyeballing measurements, you can probably just freehand it. However, I am not, so I'm going to mark off. And if you plan on doing multiple colors or doing the half paint, half wood look like I am, you are going to need some tape. Since I will be staining the first day and then applying the paint the second day, I'm still going to use a delicate tape just to ensure that I don't pull off any of the stain that I just put on. And then if you're going to be refinishing any of the wood like I am, you're probably going to want to get a stain. This here is a gel stain. I wasn't sure how the wood was going to absorb any regular stain. So a gel stain is a little bit thicker in consistency, and it actually will sit on top of the wood versus being soaked in like a regular stain. And then for application for the gel stain, I just have a little foam brush here. That is my preferred method. And then for the paint application, I just have a whiz roller and then a microfiber sleeve. This one here is a 5mm. I would definitely recommend that if you want a smooth finish. And then I just have an artist brush as well, just to get into all the places that the roller can't reach. And then you're going to need some paint as well. I just have some chalk paint here. This is one of my favorite products to use. It is a paint, primer, and sealant all in one, and it also has a variety of nice colors. However, if your piece is in a very high traffic area or it needs to be very durable, I would suggest adding an extra sealant on top. Which leads me to my next product, which is a sealant. This isn't a matte finish. I'm only going to use this for the top part. So I don't want the sheen of the top part to look different than the rest of the body, which is why I chose the matte finish. So the first furniture project we're going to tackle is this stool. So this stool I actually got at a garage sale. Originally, I wasn't going to take it. I actually already have a stool at home that I've been meaning to refinish. And since I already have a storage full of things that I'm going to be refinishing, I was a little hesitant to take it. However, the host of the garage sale sweet talked me into it, and here we are. As you can see though, there is some damage to the stool. There's this obvious large crack on the top here, and then there also seems to be some water damage on top as well, and then just some discoloration throughout the whole thing. So as I had mentioned before, I wanted to keep at least one part of the stool wood. So after examining the piece, I realized that the legs were probably in the best shape out of the whole piece, so I'll be leaving those wood and doing the rest paint. So the first step is just giving that piece a good clean. And then once your piece is all clean and dried, you can start sanding it down. And like I mentioned before, you can use sanding blocks like I am, or if you have a heavier finish, you can also use a sander. It doesn't really look like there's much of a finish left on the stool, so I'm just using the sand blocks to scuff the surface to allow the paint to adhere, and then also just to buff out any surface scratches. So now that our surface is all ready to go, we can start staining. The stain I actually picked up super cheap from a paint store a while ago. It was a custom color match that didn't work out, so sometimes they'll sell them to you for pretty cheap, and that also applies for paint as well. So my plan for this is to have the stain come up to about here, and then after that it's going to be the paint. So my plan is to apply the stain first. I don't need to tape this off as I know roughly how far up I want to go. And then when I go to apply the black paint, that's when I'll tape off and use that crisp line. And then here I just have a stir stick. Always make sure to read the labels of the stain. Most stains are stir, not shake. And always make sure that you are continuously stirring as you work with the product. And then I'm going to be using this sponge applicator to apply the stain. So you're going to want to let it sit on the surface for a few minutes, and then if there's any excess stain, you'll just want to wipe it off with the rag. So you want a pretty good amount of product on the sponge. You don't want it dripping with excess or anything like that, but you also don't want it too thin where it's going to end up looking streaky. The gel stain, if depending on the temperature, it does dry pretty quickly, so you'll just want to keep that in mind. And then when you're applying the stain, always make sure you're going with the wood grain. So now we're going to jump into any repairs that you need to do. So obviously there is this big crack right in the middle. However, because it's going to be used as a plant stand and there'll be something on top of it, I'm not too concerned with making it look absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to be using this wood filler just to at least fill the crack in so that it's easier to paint. If you wanted to hide the crack completely, I would recommend using a putty or a Bondo. And so here is the stool on the next day. The repair is all dry, and then the stain is also dry, and I'm loving the tone that it came out. I don't think it's actually necessary for a second coat, which means that we can jump into painting today. So before we jump right into the paint though, we're going to want to tape off where we want the wood to meet the paint. So again, you can kind of eyeball these measurements if you're confident. However, I am not, so I'm going to be using a measuring tape. So I'm just going to measure out on each leg where the tape is going to start. And if you're a little worried because you're a messy painter, you can also just wrap the legs in poly. That way you don't have to worry about getting any paint on them. So now let's get our paint ready for that first coat. So this is the color that I chose. It's one of my favorites. It's technically a very, very, very dark gray, almost black. I think that it looks absolutely fantastic up against pretty much any wood tone because it's neutral enough. And then I'm just gonna pour it here into my handheld paint bucket. And then I'm just gonna get my whiz roller all ready here and then get that all ready for our first coat. So I did notice that once the wood filler had dried, it did shrink a little bit. So I ended up actually putting one more layer on. And now that it's all dry, we're just gonna sand that down and then we can go ahead and paint the top. So with this paint, you can actually apply a second coat after a few hours. So I'm just gonna wrap all my tools up in poly so they don't dry out. And then we'll come back and do the second coat after a few hours. So before we get started on the second coat, I am gonna sand. I always recommend sanding in between coats, but this time it was very necessary as I had left it outside to dry and didn't realize that there was a lot of particles in the air and a strong wind. So I'm just gonna have to sand out all those little specks first. And now we get to jump into our second coat. Been a few hours now. The stool is dry to the touch, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape. You want to make sure that you're doing this very carefully. If you have to, you can also take an X-Acto knife and run the blade along the edge of the tape just to make sure that you're not going to peel up the paint when you remove the tape. So we have arrived at the final step of this process, and that is just going to be sealing the top part here. Again, if the paint you're using does not have a built-in sealant like this one does, I would definitely recommend applying a top coat everywhere. I just wanted to apply a little bit of extra protection just to the top area, as I know it's probably going to get some water on it at some point. So now we get to see the final result. So I actually ended up leaving it outside. I definitely needed some plant stands out there. I have enough inside, and this worked perfectly for this little corner here. I'm super happy with how it turned out. I love the color combination with the dark gray and the wood. It is always a classic. And yeah, overall, loving the new plant stand. All right, so the first project we're starting off with is this old TV stand. It's definitely not in horrible shape. There are a lot of surface scratches and some dents on the side. but the bones are still good, so there's a lot to work with here. I personally love little ornate details like this on furniture, and I think with a little bit of paint, we can completely transform the look of this. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the TSB cleaner on this piece. It's a little bit more of a heavy duty cleaner. I'm going to need it because there is a lot of buildup residue on the inside and along the edges. So once the piece is all dry, we're going to start sanding it down. I'm just using a medium grit sandpaper for the majority of the flat surfaces. And I'm just using a handheld sponge. And then I'm going to move into just regular sandpaper for the legs. I'm just going to kind of wrap it around. It makes it a lot easier to sand the legs versus using a sponge or a flat surface. So now we are all ready to apply that first coat of paint. I'm going to be using the same application method as I did with the stool. So essentially I'm going to use the whiz to get in as many places as I possibly can. And then wherever I can't reach with the whiz roller, I'll go back in with my artist brush. So now that I've got everything that I can with the Wiz, I'm gonna go back through here with my artist brush, and I'm just gonna hit all those little spots. So as you can probably tell, I didn't paint the legs. I knew that I would be either keeping them a wood tone or I'd be painting them gold. But after keeping the wood legs for the stool, I decided that I was gonna do these ones gold. Thankfully, the legs actually just screwed right out, which made it really easy for me. That way I didn't have to tape up the rest of the piece and spray paint it. While unscrewing the legs, I also realized that bottom part also comes off, which is gonna make it a lot easier to paint that second coat. And now with that bottom part removed, I realized how much easier it would be to get to the underside. So I just laid it down on its back, and then I also used this opportunity to get any of the small places that I may have missed, because I'm not going to be painting upside down, so this is a lot easier to see all those little spots. And next I got started on the legs. So what I did to help with spray painting, I find if you're able to find a box that you can screw the legs into, it helps to have them propped up to allow you to be able to spray from all different angles. The box I used was quite small, so I just did them two at a time.
And so this is the final result. I'm quite happy with it. I personally love the look of black and gold, so this was perfect. I actually ended up deciding to keep it inside my house instead of outside. And then just a little reminder, this is where we started. And this is the final result.